In the last video in this series, there was no sound, so I apologize about that. But we explored how there are similarities in Greek stories and Hebrew stories. This video will explore the similarities even more without the build-up. We'll just get straight to it and discuss how they are related. In the last video, we explored the themes of Lot, Sodom and Gomorrah, Orpheus, Eurydice, and Hades. We'll look at more. To begin with, the very word Bible is a Greek word. In Koine Greek, Bible simply means book. And actually, this begins our journey because, as we are going to see, there are a few words important to the Bible that are actually Greek. The very first word that we're going to explore is Septuagint. Now, the Septuagint actually means in Greek the translation of the 70. Interestingly enough, though, the Septuagint is the oldest writing of the Hebrew Bible that we have today. According to the legend, after Alexander came and conquered Egypt, the language of the Greeks became the official state language. At that time, there were a large number of Jews living in Egypt. And according to one of them, a Jewish person that was living in that time and period named Aristobulus, the Septuagint was written down around 285 BC under the reign of Ptolemy Philadelphus. What has to be taken into account here is that it was the Jews in Alexandria that came up with and formulated the Septuagint. Moving on in our Greek journey of the Bible, we will now address some of the books. So getting into the names of the books, the first 5 books of Moses is called the Pentateuch, which comes from the Greek word penta, which literally means 5. So they're talking about the first 5 books, penta. Next, we have Genesis, which comes from the Greek Genesis, which means origin, creation, or generation, or from genestai, to be born, related to the race, birth, or descent. This is Greek. Next, we have Exodus, which comes from the Greek word exodus, which is a military expedition or solemn procession, departure, literally going out from X, out. After Exodus is Leviticus, literally the book of the Levites, which is what Leviticus is, a book of rules and laws, a priestly book. And finally, we have Deuteronomy, which is also Greek, which literally means second law, or, from deuteros, which means second. And the book of Deuteronomy is related to the reforms that went on. So now that we've looked at the Greek influence on the actual names of the books of the Bible, let us turn our attention now to the stories of the Bible and see what's there. So, what is syncretism and why is it important? According to Webster's dictionary, syncretism is the combination of beliefs and practices of a people coming in contact with another people. So these are the elements of syncretism. There is a story or character. The story or character elements are combined or switched, and there is a similar or magical event. 4, these stories occur as 2 cultures come into contact with each other. And 5, the elements are blended together to create a story. So these are some of the elements of syncretism. So we're going to begin at the beginning with Genesis, chapter 1, verse 2. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. This becomes important. This part of the story is extremely similar to the Egyptian creation story of Menefer, or Heliopolis, where Atum, who existed in the primordial creative waters of Nun, begins to create the world. Now, the Greek creation myth is interesting. In the beginning, there was empty darkness. The only thing in this void was Nyx, a bird with black wings. With the wind, she laid a golden egg, and for ages she sat upon this egg. Finally, life began to stir in the egg, and out of it arose Eros, the god of love. One half of the shell rose into the air and became the sky. The other became the earth. Eros named the sky Uranus and the earth Gaia. So now we see the similarities between the biblical Yahweh, the Egyptian god Atum in the Menefer cosmology, and the Greek goddess Nyx in Greek cosmology. So now we look at the similarities. In all of them, there's an eternal void. There's a being in the eternal void. Each of them creates heaven and earth, but they do so a little differently, but nonetheless, they do. Now, taking this step by step, we're going to come to another story, which you know so well, Adam and Eve's transgression in the Garden of Eden. So we all know this story. God creates man and woman, creates the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Eve, seduced by the snake, eats of this tree and offers the fruit to Adam, and we fall from there. This, of course, sounds like Pandora's box. So, according to Greek myth, Pandora was the first woman on earth. She was created by the gods. Each of them gave her a gift. Thus, her name was one who bears all gifts. Now, she was created as a punishment to mankind. Zeus wanted to punish people because Prometheus stole fire to give it to them. Her gifts were beautifully evil, according to Hesiod. Once Pandora was created, she was then given a box and sent to Earth. She was told not to open the box, but unable to stem her curiosity, she opened the box and unleashed evil into the world. So now we have the similarities between Eve and Pandora, both the first women in the world. And now we deal with the first crime in human history, in both the biblical and Greek accounts. In the Bible, this story is about Cain. In Greece, this story is about Ixion. In the biblical book of Genesis, Cain and Abel are the first two sons of Adam and Eve. Cain, the firstborn, was a farmer, and his brother Abel was a shepherd. The brothers made sacrifices to God, each of his own produce. But God favored Abel's sacrifice instead of Cain's. Cain then murdered Abel, and God punished Cain by condemning him to a life of wandering. So then Cain left the Garden of Eden to dwell in the land of Nod, which was east of Eden, got a wife, bore a child. This child built a city. Cain named that city Enoch. Now the question becomes, where did all these people come from? And how is there enough people to have an entire city? Come on now. So Ixion had married Dia, who was the daughter of Hesanias. But Ixion refused to give his father-in-law the dowry and killed him instead. All of the humans shunned Ixion, but Zeus welcomed him on Mount Olympus. Once there, however, Ixion tried to seduce Hera, his host's wife, who reported the transgression to Zeus. So Ixion had married Dia, who was the daughter of Hesanias, but Ixion refused to give his father-in-law the dowry and killed him instead. All of the humans shunned Ixion, but Zeus welcomed him on Mount Olympus. Once there, however, Ixion tried to seduce Hera, his host's wife, who reported the transgression to Zeus. Athamas rejected Nephele and took a second wife, Ino, daughter of Cadmus, who plotted against Phrixus in hell. She bribed messengers to fake an oracle, ordering Athamas to sacrifice Phrixus to Zeus on Mount Hephaestion. As he was about to do it, Zeus, who refused human sacrifices, sent a golden ram that took Phrixus on his back and brought him safely to Colchis. So there are obvious similarities here between Abraham and Isaac and Zeus and Phrixus. This can be seen. So in the story of Ixion, the humankind's first murder, we also see similarities with Cain, humankind's first murderer, who killed his brother Abel. Now, Cain was exiled by God, but when he confesses his sin, God promises to protect him against anyone who would try to avenge Abel. This is very similar to Plato's laws. Specifically, it says, when a murderer fly, he will not stand his trial. Let him fly forever. Or if he set foot anywhere on any part of the murdered man's country, let any relation of the deceased or any other citizen who may first meet him kill him with impunity. This is Plato's Laws 871. In Genesis, it is said that the sons of God loved the daughters of men, and they fathered a generation of heroes called the Nephilim. This word sounds a lot like Nephel. So we see that there's some similarities going on here. We see a lot of different things happening in this story, and there is definitely something. So we'll end this part right here. Stay tuned as I explore more similarities between Greek mythology and biblical mythology. And follow me on this journey because it is truly becoming an interesting journey that seems to have further and further bounds. Like there is something here. It's like the more that I study and the more that I read about this, the more that I get sucked into this rabbit hole. Like, I'm understanding there is a connection between the Greek language and the Hebrew language. And then I just read that the Spartans said that they were cousins to the Jews. Now, what does all of this mean? And how has our reality been constructed for us? This is something that we should all want to find out.